major prophets, certainly one of my favorite prophets because he's an interesting character to say the least. And without a doubt, the most debated portion of Ezekiel is this opening chapter. And so we are taking our time through it because we want to understand it rightly. So 2 weeks ago, we looked at it in some detail as to what is it that Ezekiel is seeing. And what we want to do today is sort of finish that, but I want to emphasize the application of it. So our goal is that. So less technical stuff, which is what we did last time. We'll spend a little bit more time on why is this weird passage here. So we would remind us yet again, all of Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is beneficial for our teaching and instruction. Okay, so let's. I think what we'll do is we'll read verses 4 to 14, and this, if we need to make other references, we will. So Ezekiel writes, chapter 1, verse 4, "As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had human likeness, but each had 4 faces. Each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight. The soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot. They sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings on their 4 sides they had human hands. And the 4 had their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another. Each one with them went straight forward without turning as they went. As for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. 4 had the face of the ox on the left side. 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces, and their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of them touching the wing of another, while 2 covered their bodies. And each went straight forward. Wherever the Spirit would go, they went, without turning as they went. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like the burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. And the fire was bright. And out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures darted to and fro, like the appearance of a flash of lightning." All right, is that clear as mud for you? Yeah, it's wild. I love this stuff because I'm a Bible nerd. But I was reading this text, and there is a movie trope that came to mind. Many of you all know my wife and her mother and sister love scary movies. You would never expect it. My wife is one of the sweetest women you will ever know, and her and her mother in particular just love scary movies. When we were dating, I worked in Florence at the bookstore, and coming back home at night, I would drive near her house. So I would stop by, and I would see my girlfriend, because we were in love, and then I would call Mom and Dad and say, "I'm at the Phillips house, I'll be there 15 minutes, and it just worked out well. I got to see her, got to check in with Mom and Dad, because it's an hour drive back and forth from work to Mom and Dad. So it was great. And I remember several times when they would decide, 'cause my father-in-law, he worked second shift, so he wasn't there. He was at work. So they would fix dinner. They would put on a scary movie. They go to the movie rental called Croxton's in Owington, and they get a scary movie, and they would turn all the lights out. But back with VHS days, you put the movie in, and it's dark, pitch dark. This is out in the country. There's no lights outside, no light pollution whatsoever. And then when it goes to the end credits, the house is really dark, and they don't want to get up to turn a light on because they're scared. But then with VHSs, they'll watch the entire credits, and they'll turn it down. They don't want to, listen to music, whatever. So it's dark and quiet, and they start hearing things. And then when the VHS runs out, it goes to a blank screen, and then if you're still not doing anything, the TV goes off. And they'll stay there forever. And then, at 10 o'clock at night, they hear, they do this thing, because there's someone breaking in. That happened, I don't know how many times they did that. You would just never expect them to be those sort of people. Well, there's a common movie trope in those movies and other movies where the antagonist, the bad guy, he never runs, but no one can outrun him. You know what I mean? So here he comes. He's just walking. Not even walking fast, okay? He's just walking like he's got a bad hip. He can't move that quickly. And no matter how hard, they're just... And once they turn back around thinking they've gotten away, he comes around the corner and there he is. How? I don't know. Right? That's right. So the movie can happen, so the audience can be afraid. I know it sounds weird, but that is what I have in mind when I want to read this text, is that we have to remember that the Jews are in captivity. Some are in Egypt, like Jeremiah. Some are in Judah. They were enslaved. They're working the land. And then many of them, particularly of the wealthier type, the educated type, are in Babylon. This is Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Ezekiel. They're in Babylon. And from that vantage point, they realize they are a defeated people without any hope of liberation whatsoever. They are, in many ways, like their ancestors, enslaved in Egypt. There is no hope for them. And all they can do is cry out for help. And in this passage, Ezekiel says, God is on the move, and no one can escape him. Now, that is good news for the Jews. It is bad news for the Babylonians. So just to summarize what it is that is happening in the scene. Again, we won't go in all the little details like we did last time. Ezekiel is seeing these wild creatures, but what he's basically seeing is a theophany. That is, that God is appearing to the prophet on foreign soil. Understand how radical that is. That in the ancient world, land was tied to deities. So the Egyptians, it would be Osiris. That was the land of Osiris. And so when you crossed that border, you were crossing into the land of a foreign god. When you came into Judah, that was the land of Yahweh. When you go into Babylon, that's Marduk, and so on and so forth. We've talked about this before. When David is pushed into the land of the Moabites by Saul, remember Saul's chasing him, David laments he's among the Moabites because Saul has forced him out of the land of Yahweh. Or you may remember when Naaman, he's the leper, he gets healed, he goes and gets baptized, that he then takes a jar of dirt from Israel back home with him. Because he's taken the land of Yahweh. It's as if God's presence is going with him. In this passage, that worldview is shattered completely. The only way a God's a land can be extended is through conquest. So when the Babylonians take over Judah, the gods of Babylon have conquered the God of Israel. That means Yahweh is gone. He no longer possesses his own land. So what can the Jews do? And in this moment, by the river there, the Euphrates River, Ezekiel sees God on the move. So what we have here, they're described as four living creatures. In chapter 10, they're described as cherubim. And the cherubim are throne guardians. And they're holding up an expanse, is the word used in this text, later on in this text. But it's a platform. And sitting upon the platform is God himself. That's basically what it is that he is seeing. So let's start there with the basic vision. There we go. These creatures, again, these are throne room guardians. Would you like to see what they look like? What if I told you, I can show you, or give you an idea what they look like? This is the thing, is we joked last time that a lot of people come to Ezekiel 1, they think it's about aliens. And actually, I was talking to a rabbi at the Capitol today. We were talking about this passage because he's helping me with it. And I said, I used to joke that this were aliens. But now that I've studied it, it's quite offensive to say it's aliens. It's God. Don't diminish God that way. We know what Ezekiel sees because this is imagery that would have been common to his original readers. It's weird to us. It's not weird to the original readers. So let's start here. You remember King Tut. Remember that he's the most famous pharaoh. Now, he was a terrible pharaoh. The reason we have all of his gold and stuff is because people hated him so much they didn't want to bother to steal his gold. And that's the only reason why we have his stuff. I mean, he's so bad, now he's good for us. We learned so much about ancient Egypt because he was a terrible king. Here is his throne. Okay? Now, that is not something I would want to sit on. But I live in the 21st century. Now, you've seen my office chair. It is. It's rough. I inherited it from Larry, and I love it. Don't touch it. I absolutely love it. I'm going to sit there until the thing dies. It's perfect. It's a perfect chair. But I want you to notice a few things. Notice the lion faces here. We'll get a closer look. And you see the feet here. Now, you can see these are wings. We'll get a closer look. But notice the throne is what is holding up the king, who is a demigod, Pharaoh, are creatures, winged creatures. Let's get a side view. I want you to see this. That is a snake. See, there's his tail. That's his head. And he's got wings. There's one wing. There's the other wing. Here's the pharaoh hat that they like to wear. Here's another cobra. Remember when Moses confronts Pharaoh, his staff turns into a snake? What is on the headdress of Pharaoh? It's snakes. Snake imagery is everywhere. By the way, when Isaiah sees seraphim, the word seraphim means burning ones. It's in the plural. The I am is plural. It's a flying snake. They're burning ones because they're poisonous. If you get bit, it burns. They're describing snakes with wings. That's seraphim. Did I just ruin Isaiah 6 for you? But this imagery is everywhere. Now, we're going to come to this. What we see the living creatures is an eagle. Let's mix eagle/serpent for our purposes. We won't chase that rabbit. But notice here, so the king is sitting upon a throne being held up with lions and serpents and these creatures. Okay? I think I got one more. Here it is from the side. There's your lion. Notice the feet. Here's your snake. Now, I want you to notice here, it's a throne. Thrones aren't, in our vernacular, wheelchairs. They don't move. Like my office chair's got wheels on it, and it's great. So you can just fly on it, you know. But you don't want this throne to move. But the throne in this text has the wheels. And you remember what we said about the wheels is pay less attention to the mechanics and more to the function. The purpose of wheels is to move something forward. And so in the throne that you have here in Ezekiel 1 is similar to this. It's not exactly like this, but it kind of gives you an idea. It's similar to this, except instead of platforms, you have wheels. These wheels, and the wheel within the wheel is the idea that it can go in any direction it wants to. Not just forward and backwards. It can go any direction it wants. Here's another one. So this is ancient Egypt, King Tut. What about ancient Assyria? These are known as the Lamassu statues. By the way, these were destroyed in 2015 by ISIS, so there's that. But nevertheless, I want you to notice this is the face of a man. We'll see this. These are lions, and they are winged. So notice the imagery. What we see here, you have a human, a lion, and a winged creature. All three of these are right here. And this is Ashurbanipal II, very, very powerful Assyrian king. He doesn't really show up in the Bible. It's one of his descendants. So here is the side. There it is. It's a lion with wings. By the way, notice the feet are hooved. Those aren't lion feet. Those are cattle feet. It's very similar to what it is that we have. It's not exactly the same, but you can see this imagery is found everywhere in the ancient world. And it gives us a rough idea of what it is that is being described by Ezekiel. I've got more images here if you want to see them. What these are depictions of carvings and other stuff, just for the sake of clarity. Here's one. Notice there are, I think this is ancient Babylon. This is four faces, a four-faced figure. Again, that's weird to us. But I'm willing to bet 1,000 years from now, people are going to be reading about what we watch with superheroes and all the stuff we do. They're going to think that's weird. But it's not weird to us, so leave us alone. Well, this is weird to us, but it's not weird to them, so we should leave them alone. So here is one of these four-headed creatures. Here's another one. This is closer to what Ezekiel's seen. Notice you have two creatures. In ours, it's four living creatures. But here it's two creatures holding up an expanse. The word used down here is sky bearers. We can't really chase that rabbit, but that's sort of the idea of the heavens, holding up the heavens where the gods are. And so you have these creatures with four wings, 1, 2, 3, 4. They have bull-like bodies, notice their feet, human faces, and they're holding up a divine being. And this is closer to what it is Ezekiel's looking at. Ezekiel sees four beings with four faces, four wings, and two of their wings, they touch each other all around, and two, they cover their bodies. But they are associated with four different animals. Right? So this is closer to what it is that Ezekiel is seeing. This is even better. Notice the wings are touching. I'm not sure what ancient culture this is. It's a winged or a wheeled thing here. There are multiple faces, and here is your platform. So the idea is that the throne would sit. Now remember, the point of the cherubim, we'll come back to this, it's all associated with the temple. But the mercy seat is where God sits enthroned above the cherubim. It's what we talked about last time. I think I got one more. I'm stealing from, So this is a video from YouTube, a screenshot. This is from a group. I listen to almost all their podcasts or videos. They're real good, called the Bible Project. So in their summary of the book of Ezekiel, this is the image they come up with. I'm like, that's actually pretty good. So I'm just going to steal that. But you see they've got the wheels, 4 faces, the wings are touching. 2 wings are covering their bodies. Someone like the presence of a man is the best Ezekiel can come up with. Notice the emphasis on brightness. So he uses language of fire and bronze. The idea is this is a really bright being. He's overwhelmed. Was it yesterday or today, whatever? I went outside. I was yesterday. Evangel was with me. And I said something like, the worst part of snow like this is you can't go outside without 3 layers of sunglasses on. It's too much. Like when you wake up in the morning, like, oh, how much snow did we get? And you open up those windows, you regret that, don't you? It's as bad as like going to the movie theater and immediately going outside on a sunny day. Don't do that. You'll go blind. That's what Ezekiel sees, and it's overwhelming with the light imagery. And so then what you have then is this is a theophany, is that Ezekiel sees God in all of his essence. So God is enthroned above the cherubim, these throne room guardians, which were common images in the ancient world. I compared it 2 weeks ago to like Secret Service. How do you know the president is nearby? You see dudes with the earpiece in. And I told this story is when I was at Walmart a few years ago, and I saw one of the governor's guards just there. And he's a real tall guy. They're all tall. And I thought, why is the governor in Walmart? What is he doing here? Like, I'm going to go see the governor. And then it hit me, well, he was off duty. He was just shopping, He had to pick up milk before he went home. But when I saw him, I thought, well, the governor's coming. When Ezekiel sees the cherubim, the reader knows, oh, I see what's happening. God is showing up. And he is showing up in his essence. And Ezekiel's getting the full picture. So in this context, Ezekiel is like Isaiah or Moses or Elijah. He has this theophany that is unique in Scripture, or even like the Transfiguration in the Gospels. So obviously then this is an overwhelming experience. So that is as close as I can get you to what it is Ezekiel sees. It's weird to us, but it's good for them. So, but what is the point? Well, why do we care? You could say, look, this is weird, let's move on. Why does it matter? Well, all that imagery does matter. And Ezekiel knows what he's doing. I would remind you that Ezekiel is a priest. And he knows his Bible well, and he knows the Jewish system well. So 2 things I want us to see this evening. The first one is this vision, it gives us the assurance of God's presence. Remember that the Jews are in captivity. If you are not in Israel, God is not with you. That's the way they all think. If you're not in Egypt, Osiris isn't with you. If you're not in Babylon, then Marduk isn't with you. This is the way that the ancient world thought. And so you can understand then, okay, we've been judged by God, therefore he has given up on us. This is what the book of Habakkuk is all about. He's wondering, God, how can you let those Babylonians take us over? I know you're angry at us, you should be angry, but you can't let their gods win. And Habakkuk is struggling with that. And so here you are, you're weeping by the Euphrates River. Remember Psalm 137. And then all of a sudden, this former priest says, I saw God in Babylon. What's the message? God found us, and he isn't bound by land. God is with us even in captivity. I think that's worth chewing on. Isn't this the lesson Jonah had to learn? Jonah goes out to the sea. And what does he find? God's Lord over the sea. He goes into the abyss. So what does he find? Well, God will go into the abyss. He goes all the way to Nineveh. What does he find? Well, God can find you in Nineveh. You can't outrun God. Now, where do we get this in the text? This shows up in two primary ways. Again, this is why the imagery is important. First of all, this passage, though it's weird to us, borrows much of its imagery from the temple itself. That is to say that Ezekiel, who is a priest, understood what he sees, that the temple, the ancient temple, Solomon's temple, was a mirror, if you will, of the heavenly temple. The temple is just where God dwells. The heavens is where God dwells. And so the temple is to mirror the Garden of Eden and the God's presence in heaven. So every detail is taken from that. What happens when Solomon dedicated the temple? God showed up in two ways. One, through a thick cloud. Remember the cloud that led the Israelites through the Exodus? Well, when they dedicated the tabernacle, that cloud that led them descends upon the tabernacle, and it later shows up in the temple. But it isn't just a cloud that shows up. It's a fireball, if you will. Fire descends and consumes the temple. What is the imagery that Ezekiel sees here? In fact, we saw it there in verse 4. Behold, a stormy wind came out of the north. A great cloud came with it. And we read there at the end all this language about fire. That's not an accidental imagery. Furthermore, there are 4 cherubim in this imagery. So there's 4 cherubim with the 4 faces and the 4 wings, all that. Now what's interesting, in the temple are 4 cherubim. 2 are at the mercy seat. So you have the Ark of the Covenant, and you have the wings of 2 cherubim. Their wings are touching, hovering over the Ark of the Covenant. It's protective. But there are 2 outside of that who are much larger, and as you enter into the Holy of Holies, you pass by and through the cherubim, and their wings touch. So in the temple, we have 4 cherubim. What does Ezekiel see? 4 cherubim. And what is at the middle of all this is God's presence. That's what the temple is all about. And then consider this. This is the description of the temple in 1 Kings 7. This was the construction of the stands. They had panels, and the panels were set in frames. On the panels that were set in frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. Now, where have I seen those 3 creatures? It's exactly what Ezekiel says. He says the cherubim have 4 faces. 2 of them is a lion and an ox or a bull. All this imagery comes from the temple. And so the point is that Babylon may destroy the temple, but it cannot and they will not destroy God, nor will God abandon his people even when they are under his judgment and in captivity. What an encouraging message that is to them. So when Ezekiel says, guys, you're not going to believe this. God is here. They're like, Ezekiel, you've gone crazy. And he said, I've been thinking about this all night. God is here. I've got to rethink how I think about Yahweh. He's not bound by land or a building. He's here with us in captivity. This shows up in another way. The Exodus wanderings there through the wilderness is significant. When they built the tabernacle, each night they would camp in a certain order. You have 12 tribes, and you would have 3 tribes on each of the 4 directions, north, east, south, and west. So every night they camped this way, and they were very particular about where you camped out at. So some of the main tribes that you want to see here is Judah, going to be over here, and then you're going to have Reuben and Simeon here. Ephraim and Manasseh, of course, are Joseph's sons, the half-tribes. And then you've got Dan and them up here. And this is the way, this is... you're expected to get in this order. So basically what I'm trying to say is God gave the 12 tribes of Israel assigned seating every night. You know, like a teacher who's had enough of the boys in her class. the tribes of Israel. If you read your Bible, you're thinking, that makes sense. They probably needed assigned seating, okay? But this is how they are ordered. Now, consider this. All 12 of these tribes have associated with them a symbol that was unique to that tribe. This is not unique to us, is it? So, your favorite basketball team has a mascot. It's a Wildcat. For me, it's a Cardinal. We were just making jokes about my hometown. We were the Running Rebels. My mother's hometown, they were the Wildcats, because Warsaw has no creativity. But your favorite football team, be the Bengals or the Raiders or the Patriots, whatever it is, we get the imagery. And something similar is going on here. All 12 tribes have a symbol that symbolizes them. By the way, we do this with the 12 apostles, but that's neither here nor there. Now, let's take 4 prominent tribes. Let's start with Judah. Any idea the predominant symbol of Judah was? It's the lion. By far. This is the clearest one. So, Genesis 49. Judah is a lion's cub. This is Jacob's prophecy over Judah. He crouched as a lion. Revelation 5:5. Jesus is the lion from the tribe of Judah. And then you can look at Hosea 5. I think I took that up. Any guess what? We go back here. So we looked at Judah. That's a lion. Ephraim. What was Ephraim? Ephraim was an ox or a bull. Here's Deuteronomy 33. And of Joseph he said, a firstborn bull, speaking of Ephraim. So we have a lion with Judah, a bull or an ox with Ephraim. Reuben, which camped to the south. Again, I want to show you that here's Judah, here's Ephraim, here's Reuben, then we'll look at Dan. So these are the 4 corners of where they camped in the wilderness. So Dan is Reuben rather, camped to the south, is represented by a man because he was the firstborn son of Jacob. Genesis 49, Dan shall be, I changed it in my notes. Dan is a serpent. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. Dan is a troublesome tribe. They're serpent for a reason. Now, I know that what Ezekiel sees is an eagle, not a serpent. There are reasons for that go beyond our purpose. For now, let's just kind of merge them together for the sake of simplicity. So Dan is a serpent. Reuben is a man because he's the firstborn. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity, preeminent in power. It's interesting, isn't it, that if you go back to this image, you get 4 images: the lion, the man, the ox, the serpent/eagle. Now, why are they camped this way? Northeast, southwest. Who is at the middle of that, of the 4 corners of the earth? God is among his people. So here comes Ezekiel, depressed. If we put him in the context of Psalm 137, remember that they put the harps on the weeping willow. Right? It's a sad psalm. How can we sing of the glories of Zion when we are in Babylon? And we can imagine Ezekiel there. They're grieving. And he gets this wild vision. What is he? He understands the temple imagery. He goes, wait a minute. These 4 symbols. One to the north, one to the south, one to the east, one to the west. But God is in the midst of them. In the wilderness, they were not in the promised land, but God was still there. It's the same message. All this imagery is to fit that. Again, it's wild to us, but the ancient Jews understood the imagery. And they're not just artificial things. So, God is among his people wherever his people find themselves. Doesn't it sound like Jesus? Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And lo, I'm with you wherever you go to the end of time. That's the beauty of the gospel. Here's another thing we've got to get. And that is presence and procession. Procession. Now, if the first point speaks to the captive Hebrews, the second point speaks to the captors, Babylon. So remember, Ezekiel's a prophet. Prophets encourage his people towards greater righteousness and to affirm the promises of their God, but also warns, particularly those who would come against God's people. And I believe this vision does precisely that. So he's not just speaking to a Jewish audience. I think he's speaking to a Babylonian one as well. Now, this is where it's going to get trippier, and we've got to go beyond our comfort zone. It goes beyond my expertise, so I'm going to do the best I can. Some of y'all may remember we did our Q&A around Christmas time, and we talked about the Star of Bethlehem, and we did astrology. We're going to do a little bit of that, okay? And remember, we're not going to, this isn't necessary stuff in the Bible because the Babylonians didn't believe in the Hebrew Bible. They had their own religion. I think God is taking that, and he's saying, oh, I'm going to use that to warn you what you've done. Judgment's coming. Throughout the ancient world, the stars in the sky play an important role in both agriculture and religion. Not so much now, because it's dark. If we were to go out our front door here in the church, and we are not a big metropolis city, we could barely see the stars with any clarity. And what we could see are the basic stars. We could probably see Orion's Belt and Venus. That's about it. That's awful, isn't it? I mean, I grew up in the country. Man, a good date night with your girl was to lay in the back of a truck and look at the stars and just let her talk. I mean, that's a good date night there. It's cheap, simple, romantic. Man, you can't do that in the city, can you? But in the ancient world, there's no light pollution. And so you saw the stars at night, and they became experts. In fact, Babylon is often considered the greatest astronomers in the ancient world. So we'll come back to that. I want to show you a few images of this. These are the pyramids of Giza. This is a matter of debate. I know nothing about them other than they are big triangles out in the middle of the desert of Egypt. And I know that's a camel, so I know that much. But many, has often been suspected, these are aligned to match Orion's belt. Now, I don't know how you prove that. I don't know this stuff. But let me give you one that I find to be more fun. You all know my son's going to graduate in May. So we're kicking him out and start his internship. And I told him when things slow down before he leaves, I'm going to take him to Southern Ohio. I wish BJ was here because BJ knows exactly what I'm talking about. You ever heard of the Serpent's Mound? Oh, yeah. Here it is. This is a serpent eating like an egg. Okay, something like that, okay? If you go straight out, it's the summer solstice. And then you can find the other ones, so you connect it to the tail with some, I don't know. It goes beyond, I don't get how any of that stuff works. But they can measure the stars and the time of the year and all that somehow by this weird thing. But you can't see it unless you're up high. I don't know what to do with this stuff. I'm not an expert on it. But I think it's cool. You know, I do think that's cool. It's me being a dude. My point is that the stars play a larger role in the ancient world than it does for us now. We just don't do this anymore. If you hear someone talking about stars, avoid them. That's basically what I'm saying. I've told this story before. When I worked at the Christian bookstore in Louisville, we had a lady come in, ask if we had tarot cards. I didn't know what tarot cards were. And so I was trying to help her, and it became very clear to her. I had no idea what I was talking about, and she was in the wrong store. And then they made fun of me after that. But the Bible does hint at this sort of stuff. For example, in Genesis 1, we read, "Let them," the stars and all that, "be signs and for seasons and for days and years." Right, so you got the sun, the moon, and stars. Right? So the moon determines the months, the sun determines the year, all that sort of stuff. And God made the stars and set them in the expanse of the heavens. Now remember, the cherubim are holding up this word, expanse. It's a platform. But the word Ezekiel uses is expanse. It's as if the heavens itself has opened up and the cherubim are holding it up. And notice these stars rule over the day and night. The ancients saw the stars as divine angelic beings. And so what you had were wandering stars we now call planets. But even then, the stars moved in the sky. So in the springtime, you saw different stars and you saw in fall. And so each of them, so you have all these stories. This is where the constellations come from. I want to read to you C.S. Lewis, my favorite, the Narnia Chronicles, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. There's a great scene where Eustace, Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved the name, so a star comes down in the form of like a beautiful woman. So stars come down and sort of hanging out with them. And they don't know what to do with this. Eustace says, in our world, a star is a huge ball of flaming gas. At which point the star says, even in your world, my son, that is not what a star is, only what a star is made of. What Lewis is trying to help the reader understand is this ancient view of the stars. That they were spiritual beings to them. And so what you have then is the storytelling of the ancient pagans took from the stars those stories. Again, this is weird to us, but I think God is picking up on that. He's making fun of them, a little bit, but he's trying to make a broader point to the Babylonians. So how does this work out? Well, remind you that Daniel was among the chief of the Magi. The Magi were experts in studying the stars. Okay? Daniel is a colleague, if you will, a contemporary of Ezekiel. So Ezekiel is in this world. Now, these four beings, the cherubim, living creatures, what are the four creatures associated with them? There is a human, there is a lion, there is a bull or ox, there is an eagle/serpent. Okay? Well, let's have some fun with this. Let's talk about constellations that I know nothing about. Let's start with Aquarius. This is the human. Now, according to the website that has to do with the stars, this is what he's supposed to look like. I've never figured out how you get constellations from the stars. I can do clouds. Ever find the state of Kentucky in the clouds? Isn't that cool? I mean, you can see, I can do clouds. I cannot do constellations. I can do Orion's belt. I can do the Dipper, the Big Dipper, Little Dipper. That is it. That's where you lose me, okay? Okay, so is the cup part of Paul? I don't know. It's a cup to me, But people see this, and God bless them. But Aquarius, so these are all from the zodiac. Aquarius is the human. Let's look at another one. Leo, anyone know what Leo is? He's the lion. Yeah, that's like the only one I can get. There's the lion, okay? Again, I don't know how you get a lion out of that, but you do. I'm so glad this website drew it for me, because I ain't getting it. Taurus is the bull. It's half a bull, or like a third of a bull, but it's a bull. And so there you go. There's your bull. And this last one, Scorpio is a scorpion. It's a serpentine figure, eagle. Again, we're going to put these together because then we really get trippy. Now, here's the thing. From what I've read, this is true. I cannot prove it to you because I don't even know how to prove this to you. But this is standard operation procedure, apparently, for those who keep up with this. In the middle of these four constellations is another constellation called Cepheus or Cephus. Cepheus. Now, Cepheus is portrayed as a man sitting upon a throne. So you have these four creatures. In the middle is one who sits upon a throne. But this picture of Ezekiel is that these four creatures are holding up one sitting upon a throne, and he's on the move. It's not like the stars. And his name isn't Cepheus. It's not the gods of Babylon. It's the God of the captive Israel. So I think this is why the wheels matter. Is that God isn't stationary. He's marching to deliver his people. It's yeah. And we're going to get a lot of Egypt imagery as it comes. So Ezekiel is warning the Babylonians. You have destroyed the people of God. God has not forgotten that. So God's going to come and deal with you swiftly. And as great as Babylon was, it lasted only for 70 years. Now, do you think that number 70 is accidental? No, it's not at all. How about we look at Habakkuk? Is that okay if we look at Habakkuk? You can open up your table of contents. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk. Habakkuk is a pre-exilic prophet. Again, Habakkuk is saying, why would you send the Babylonians to destroy us? They are a wicked, violent people. So, in Habakkuk 1, like verse 2, O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you not hear me? Or cry to you violence and you will not save? He's asking about the question of evil. Why are the wicked doing well and the righteous suffering? And then what God does is he brags about it. In Habakkuk 1:5, look among nations and see, wonder and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days you would not believe if told. For hold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, the bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. God is bragging, I'm raising up the Chaldeans, and they're going to slaughter people. And Habakkuk is thinking, I don't understand you're too righteous for this. I can't understand why the righteous or why the unrighteous and the wicked prosper. And you would choose them to judge us. He's not questioning that the Israelites are wicked. And so, but what God does in chapter 2 is, so if you want to see starting in chapter 2, verse 6, is God gives a series of woes to Babylon. Woe to him who heaps up what is not his own. Verse 9, woe to him who gets evil gain for his house. Verse 12, woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. It's Babylon. And so God is going to use the Babylonians to judge Israel, but God has not forsaken Israel. He's going to judge the Babylonians. And so Habakkuk has what I believe is the best poetry in all the Bible in chapter 3. For example, chapter 3, verse 2, this is a prayer. Excuse me. O Lord, I have heard the report of you, and your work, O Lord, do I fear? He's like, I don't get this. But what Habakkuk is going to say is, I accept it because it is your will. So Habakkuk has been told in 70 years, Babylon's going to come crashing down. So go down to the very end, chapter 3, verse 17 of Habakkuk. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He made my feet like deer's feet. He makes me tread on my high places. What is Habakkuk concluding? They're coming. But God sees history, not just the moment. He sees all of history, past, present, and future. And God has already condemned the Babylonians. And Habakkuk, as far as I know, doesn't survive the invasion of the Babylonians, but Ezekiel does. And Ezekiel, there in the city of Babylon, the capital city, he sees God on the move, and he says, Habakkuk's right, their days are numbered. That's good news. And so what happens whenever Jesus shows up? He shows up as one claiming to be the tabernacle of God. But instead of bringing judgment upon the wicked, he takes the judgment of the wicked upon himself. And that is how you and I escape the judgment of God. That's the good news. So it's wild imagery, but in it is a powerful message that is still relevant today. God is with his people wherever they may find themselves. And woe to those who would attack God's people. That's good news. Okay, I've done a lot of talking. How about we close out in prayer? I know Danny's not here. I would